It's the start of summer here in 2020. We've been dealing with the big virus and lockdowns for many months, so the reasons for pessimism are obvious. Is there any good news? Ted's here and we'll discuss it starting right now.
This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
Ted, welcome back. We are recording this on June 22nd, 2020 in our head office here in Kitchener, and we're still physically distanced. We've got the two-shot there. You can see that we are, I don't know, how long is this boardroom table? 10 feet, 12 feet apart?
It's at least 10.
And I'm hoping that the next time we do a podcast, we're able to be back in our studio, but we'll see. We did our first COVID show back in March. You remember, show number 290. We were sitting out in the lobby. Not sure why we didn't just sit in here, but I guess there was
there was a reason at the time.
Must have been I guess because we had staff still working here probably. So, and it seems that every show I've done since then has been about bad news. So let's start with the bad news, the reasons for pessimism, and then we want to spend most of the show on reasons for optimism. So the most obvious bad news, obviously, is this is a medical issue. There are people who are getting sick, people who are dying. That's obviously very bad. From an economic point of view, I guess the worst news is unemployment.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's 13.7%, or 1 out of every 7 Canadians isn't working. So if you think about that, where the place that you used to work, these are people that aren't getting paid anymore. 1 out of every 7, that's massive.
Yeah, and so a significant number, 8.5 million Canadians have applied for the CERB.
Right.
And the maximum has been extended as we record this to 24 weeks. So 24 weeks, $500 a week, that's $12,000. So that's good. That has helped cushion the blow.
Yeah, that's a double-edged sword, but we'll talk about that.
We can talk about that. The reason for pessimism is that it's taxable.
Right. I mean, so originally it was you could get $8,000 worth of benefit. And so probably taxes owing on that might be $1,000, depending on what happens the rest of the year. Now you're talking about 6 months worth of benefit, $12,000. The tax is more likely $2,000. It's getting to be a number that's going to be significant when people file their taxes next spring.
Well, yeah, if you're in the 20% tax bracket, that's $2,400, which is more than 1 month of CERB.
Correct.
Is going to end up going in taxes.
And the government hasn't told anybody to set that money aside. It's just, we know you need the cash. Here's the cash. Oh, by the way, it'll be on your tax return.
Yeah, and we actually had a meeting about this morning. Whereabouts on the tax return is that going to be? Yeah. How's it going to work?
What's it going to look like?
What's it going to look like? Nobody knows. So yes, that's something that you want to be preparing for. We talked about it on a previous show that banks have allowed people to defer their car payments, their mortgage payments, their credit card payments.
So that's another double-edged sword in that, okay, you're not laying out the cash today, but every day you don't make a payment to the bank, they're adding interest to your debt. So now you're paying interest on the interest that you're not able to pay while you're deferring.
Yeah, so that's a reason for pessimism once we get to September or whenever the deferral periods end and you got to start paying.
You got to do whatever you got to do, but all of these things are going to add up and they're going to hit people in a very hard way eventually.
Now, final reason for pessimism, and then we'll start talking about reasons for optimism, and that is that some of these job losses will be permanent.
Yeah, they're never coming back.
They're never coming back. And so I think of particularly small business people, people who operate a hair salon or, some kind of personal services business. Now, you and I have gotten haircuts.
Right.
So we are actually quite happy.
And I noticed you've shaved for this show.
And I have shaved for this show. So for those watching on YouTube, thank you very much.
You can tell the chronology by the facial growth.
That's right. You can absolutely see it. And the economy opened up. They allowed us to get haircuts here in the Kitchener area, I guess 2 weeks ago now. So you and I were almost first in line to get that done. But when I talk to the people who do things like cutting hair, they're saying, well, we were shut down for 3 months. Nobody's coming in to get 5 haircuts to get caught up.
Right.
They just get one. And a lot of people have realized, hey, maybe I'll just start wearing my hair longer. I'm not going to be getting my hair cut as often.
Yep.
I talked to my father yesterday, because yesterday was Father's Day as we're recording this. And I said, well, how you doing without getting a haircut? And I mean, he's 85 years old. He doesn't have a huge amount of hair anyways. But he said, oh, well, I'm using that little trimmer thing on my shaver. And I want to go back and get a haircut, but it hasn't been the end of the world for anybody. So I think we adjust to the new reality. And as a result, some of those jobs go back. Restaurants would be another classic example.
Food service is the biggie. I mean, as a family, we've decided we're deliberately picking up takeout from places that we used to go to just to keep them alive. But it's not all of their staff. I mean, there's no waiter required. There's nobody busboying. There's none of that sort of stuff. It's just people preparing the food and selling the food. So some of those jobs are gone, and they may not come back because maybe people aren't going to do that anymore.
Yep, and we've done the same thing, and it's been great. And I kind of hope some of these restaurants keep doing the takeout thing because it's kind of cool to swing by the front door and your meal's there and you go. But when you go into a restaurant, you're probably having a drink. Right. A fizzy pop or something more advanced than that. And there's obviously good profit in that. And as you say, the people who wash the dishes, the cleaning staff, all that, well, they aren't there for takeout.
The majority of people in hospitality are the ones providing the actual service. They're dealing with you individually. The cooks, that's a small portion of the people employed in that industry. And it's been devastated.
And hotels, the convention business, all that kind of stuff.
That's right.
So lots of reasons for pessimism.
Yep.
Let's switch gears and talk about reasons for optimism. And so I've written down a bunch here. You'll probably have a few more that you'll want to throw in. So the first one is, and I don't want to make this too generic as, we can all work from home and everything's going to be great. We'll talk about that. Those are the obvious reasons for optimism. I'd like to maybe dig under the surface a little bit more. One of them is that when we've had major crises before, World War II, which you and I weren't around for, but when that happened, everything got destroyed. Buildings, machinery, everything. Well, we've had a crisis, but the infrastructure still exists. All the businesses are still there. The machines are still there. The workforce is still there. So does that not mean that we will be able to get back to work much quicker?
Well, one of the ways they kickstarted things, though, after those previous disasters was investing in infrastructure, rebuilding all the things that were blown up. We don't have to do that this time. What we've got to do is convince people that the world is returning to normal, and then therefore you can return to the things you used to do. So the big kicker in all of this is getting people back to work and then getting consumers to spend money.
Yeah, which will be probably the most difficult part of that, because we've all got used to not spending money. Are we going to go back to our old ways? I guess we're going to find out.
Yeah, we kicked on this early on when we were talking about COVID. I don't remember. It used to be 30 days, you change a new habit. Now they're talking more like 60 or 90. It doesn't matter because we're over 90.
Yep.
And so people are going to do things differently in the future. We just have to figure out how.
Yeah. How many people have learned to cook or learned to cook at least a few more dishes?
Right.
And you know what? It's not that hard. I kind of like it. I'm not standing in line at the restaurant, whatever. I've got to buy the stuff, but particularly in the summer, I can put something on the barbecue.
Right.
So some of those habits I think will continue, which is, as you said, a two-edged sword. Great for you at home because, perhaps healthier meals quicker. You don't have to go out, but not so good for the service industry. So the infrastructure is still there, but you're right. We don't have the infrastructure rebuilding. Instant communications. So this is another one, which is absolutely a two-edged sword.
You got that right.
And that's social media. So it's both good and bad because obviously all the fear and panic and everything is all over the place.
How many people were hoarding toilet paper for absolutely no reason?
Right. And have we run out of trees in Canada, which is where toilet paper comes from? And so, of course, 3 weeks after it started, the stores are so full and people are trying to return it.
I'm dealing with a visual of toilet paper being harvested off a tree right now.
Maybe we can put that on the screen. So you're right. Social media in that case was bad because it got everyone hyped up. And I mean, I make it a policy not to watch the evening news because I think it's, highly biased in whichever direction.
Right.
But the good thing is with social media, we are actually able to disseminate ideas a whole lot quicker. So if you come up with the idea that, hey, maybe what restaurants should do is have patios and put people out on the streets and close off the main street and things like that. Okay, well, that's the kind of idea that somebody can have, somebody can push out there, and the good ideas can spread quickly too.
Right.
Whether that's going to happen or not, I guess we can see. So I think another reason for optimism is that because we've been through this, if there is a second wave, we will be more prepared.
We would hope.
Now, you and I had some massive scrambling to do in March.
Redeploying staff.
And
hardware.
And all that kind of stuff. So we are already thinking about, okay, so let's assume things get back to somewhat normal. People can come back into the office. What if there's a second wave? Well, we'll be way better at that deployment.
Right.
I would assume a lot of other businesses will be as well.
You got to hope so.
And presumably things like, well, the place you go to get your car fixed.
Yeah.
What changes have they made already, and what changes do you think of those changes will continue?
Right. So the example is you don't talk to the service person anymore. You drop your keys off in a specified spot. All the conversation is either by text or email or phone call ahead of time. So there's very little interaction with people.
And again,
keep doing that.
Is that good or is that bad? Now, in our business, we have been meeting with pretty much everybody over video conference, Zoom, for example.
Electronically, yeah.
And, well, is that bad or good?
There's a learning curve for the public. They've got to get comfortable with it. But once people try it, they seem to be enjoying it is the wrong term, but they're warming up to the whole idea because you can do it from home. You don't have to make a trip someplace. You're much more comfortable. You're more confident.
Yeah, and the rules for us have always been we have to meet with you in person to personally assess your situation before you can file a consumer proposal or bankruptcy.
Yeah. We being a licensed insolvency trustee.
And the government has given us special permission, which will last at least till the end of this year into next spring, that we can perform those assessments over a video conference. Mm-hmm. And so for some people, well, I'd really rather come in and sit down and see you. And I'd prefer that too. I can see your body language, we can talk and whatnot. But for a lot of people, it's like, I've got disability issues and getting to your office is a problem. Whereas now I flip on my phone and I can see you. Yep. And I don't have to arrange a babysitter. I don't have to take time off work. We can do it over my lunch hour or whatever.
There are lots of positives for people. It's a higher level of service. It's a more convenient form of service for them.
Well, which goes into the next reason for optimism, which again is a two-edged sword, and that is the whole work from home thing.
Right.
So up until 100 days ago, companies, which, big companies are all run by old guys. No, we don't want anyone working from home. People have to be in the office. We have to be able to track them. We have to be able to see them. If I can't watch you doing your work, then you're not doing your work. That's been the conventional wisdom. And I think that's a failure of management, but okay, fine. I understand it. Well, now we're working from home, and it could be that some employees enjoy it, but there could be a lot of employers who go, wait a minute, this is working out pretty well too.
Well, and there will be some opportunities because of this. People are going to upgrade their internet service, so maybe we'll get to 5G faster than anybody thought we were going to. There are going to be people buying office supplies for their home that they used to have provided by their employers. So there are going to be some opportunities here.
Yeah, and obviously the lost opportunities will be, I guess I'm not going out to the food zoo at lunch. Right, because I'm working from home. But there will be a lot of companies that'll say, yeah, you know what, this actually did work out better than we thought. That doesn't bode well for the commercial real estate industry.
It certainly does not.
But it probably bodes well for outside of the main cores. There may be fewer people in downtown Toronto, but there may be more people in the outlying areas. Yep. Employees, for the most part, and we've talked to our team. We got a team of 100 people here, and virtually every single one of them has said, "Yeah, I actually do like this."
Well, they've gotten used to it, so now they've figured out how to do their job, balance it with their home life, so that their kids aren't driving them crazy all the time, or they're not completely distracted by things in the house. They can still get things done.
Yeah, and there's some things you got to do. You got to have a quiet workspace. So, okay, I'm going to set a computer up in the basement or in the spare room or whatever, but no commute.
Right.
Like, that's kind of huge, right?
So that's going to have an impact on the car industry.
Yep.
Which will be fun to watch.
I guess it's good for climate change, though, because we'll be driving less.
I would think so.
Again, there's some good and some bad. So I don't know how you balance the two. I don't know what the
Well, it's like anything else. When there's a transition in the economy, we just have to wait and see what happens. Some people have the insight or the luck, whatever you wanted to call it, to be in the right place at the right time. The rest of us will just have to make adjustments.
And I think that's the main message that I would like to get across in today's podcast, which is there will be changes.
Right.
And so you have to be thinking a couple of steps ahead and go, well, okay, so if this work from home thing, for example, becomes a thing, how does that affect me personally?
Right.
The good news is I don't have a commute. The bad news is I guess my employer can hire someone from anywhere now.
Yeah, and there was an article in the Globe about that this morning, about how it's going to affect people's wages and the requirements people are going to look for in a new job. Can I work from home at least some of the time? All sorts of things like that. Yeah,
and the guys in Silicon Valley have already said, hey, if you're still living in Silicon Valley, we'll still pay you the decent wages. But if you're going to move to Iowa, then we're actually going to pay you less. And that really doesn't seem fair, because if I'm doing the same job, why would you pay me less? So I can see some conflict between employers and employees here.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
But as an employee, okay, so if I can work from home, what does that exactly mean? Is there the potential that my job gets shipped somewhere else?
Right.
How do I mitigate against that?
How am I going to qualify for an advancement? How am I going to impress people if they never see me? I mean, it's all sorts of stuff that people got to get used to.
Yeah, I think that's a key one. How do you network with, your fellow employees and the boss and everything? Yep. How do they know you're doing a good job?
Well, and based on what my 12-year-old's been doing for the last 3 months, the next generation's got this nailed. I mean, she's on 3 different devices at the same time talking to her friends. I can't keep track of any of it.
Yeah. So this is probably an area where the younger you are, you've got a bit of a leg up.
Should be.
More adaptable. Now, the counter argument to that would be, well, when you and I were young and we started our first job at the big accounting firm.
Right. Do you remember the luggables we used to carry?
Yes, I do remember. They were, I think I had 2 briefcases full because they were so huge. One was for the computer, one was for the hard drive or something.
Yep.
But we at least got to spend time in the same room around a boardroom table or a lunch table or whatever with our coworkers, but also with the boss.
Right.
And you learn stuff informally.
That's right.
It was, when you went out for drinks on Thursday night that you'll learn stuff. And
that's when you get indoctrinated into the culture.
That, absolutely. And when you're in business meetings or in meetings and you see how the boss reacts and what the boss does and everything.
Yep.
Is it the same over Zoom? Can you have a mentor over Zoom? How do you do that?
What you got to do is watch the university calendars. Let's see how many of them are putting on video conferencing courses now. The psychology and body language of a video call.
Well, that
got to be coming.
Might be something we all have to focus on. I know that I have a son who is in university, and they've told them that, well, for the first term going back, it will be attendance, physically optional. They're going to be able to do everything remotely. So kind of hard to hang out with your friends if they're living 4 cities over. So, okay, so back to reasons for optimism. And I think we kind of already started touching on this, and that is, we now all have an opportunity to reinvent ourselves.
Right.
So a lot of people have been forced to start a new job or a new business. Mm-hmm. And it may actually end up being better for them.
Right.
So, and I mean, you already kind of touched on some areas where, new businesses that may end up starting.
I think there's going to be a baby boom next spring. But we'll see.
Could very well be. So what's the business opportunity there then? You want to be the local crib manufacturer?
Could be all sorts of stuff.
Do you think that we will be making more stuff here? Because part of the problem with our supply chain is if we're importing stuff from China and they had the start of the virus there, and as a result, supply chains got shut down, is it more likely that more stuff will be made here?
I think it's going to change the way people view the term globalism. So what we've been living with is the Industrial Revolution, where you take production to wherever the cheapest labor is. Well, now production is going to change to the point where either it's going to be automated or at least modernized to the extent that it's going to make more sense to manufacture things locally. And so the jobs are naturally, some of those types of jobs are going to come back. Now, the heavy industries, the ones nobody really wants, are still going to go to the places of the world where they're desperate for economic growth. So the steel manufacturer is a perfect example. I don't know, the mining and resource industries are always going to be where the minerals and the resources are. But the rest of it, you're right, the supply chains are going to come home.
And that's, again, good for many reasons, unless you're a supply chain management person, I guess. But we're still going to need truck drivers to bring it from point A to point B. Maybe it'll be more short haul, less long haul. But I think, yes, I would be, if I'm thinking about where I'm going to be reinventing myself and I'm thinking what will my job be 5 or 10 years from now, what are the types of things that are being done that are going to come back?
I know what your job's going to be 5 years from now.
Tell me that.
We're going to be very busy fellows, unfortunately.
Well, that's probably true. So, and again, that's another change that we've seen in the business world now, where we are doing a lot more stuff by video, for example,
right,
which allows you to be that much more efficient. And even if you're a doctor, a psychologist or someone, rather than, booking your meetings an hour and a half apart because, I got to go to the reception area and get the person off the elevator and get them a coffee and everything. Well, if it's just a Zoom meeting, perhaps I can be more productive.
Yep.
Perhaps not if the internet's not working. I mean, we've certainly run into those issues.
But you've touched on this in a couple of places in conversations we have. There's so much stuff that we used to do that was just busy work. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of that may be gone now.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, if you have the Monday morning meeting where the whole team gets together and you all sit in a room, well, you can't really be doing something else. Whereas if that meeting's happening over a teleconference, I guess I can be vacuuming my apartment while I'm listening to the meeting. and there is a ton of busy work.
Right.
There are forms and
anytime you have people interacting, the job will expand to fill the time available. So it's
and part of that is good, like having a coffee with your coworkers and asking how it went on the weekend and all that sort of stuff is good stuff. But I think if we can eliminate a lot of that busy work, we have certainly found in our business that we have gone from being a very heavy consumer of paper.
Right.
And all the paper we buy goes on your credit card, so you would know exactly how much we spend. And for the last 2 or 3 months, it's been essentially zero.
Well, I remember in 2006 when we celebrated being the first firm to e-file. We thought that was just great, and that was going to be when paper disappeared, and it just got so much worse. So this has been a wonderful experiment that way.
Yeah, I think e-filing was I think it was more like 2001, 2002. But you're right. We were the first. We were. Yeah, it was 2006 is when we went paperless.
Oh, gotcha.
And that's when and that was a massive change.
Right.
Because you remember it well. We said to all our staff, here's what we're going to do. You're going to have 2 monitors on your desk, not just one.
Right.
And you're going to have a scanner on your desk so that if paper comes in, you'll be able to scan it. We'll keep it electronically. And I don't think anyone was in favor of 2 monitors.
No, and now we're trying to convince them that 3 might be overkill.
Right. And so now if you took one of those monitors away, people would freak out. In fact, when we were deploying people to home, it's like, okay, well, I got to make sure I got my 2 monitors at home. And, and yes, if we went to 3 monitors or 4 monitors, people would probably be in favor of that. So that's a classic example of a change that was, in that case, we initiated it.
There was significant resistance to change, but at the end of the day now, people would never go back.
And so now we're doing everything electronically. So, I'll give you a trivial example. We have meetings of creditors, where a proposal might be officially approved. So how did we used to do it? Well, I would print off a piece of paper and I would sign it, and then I would scan it and send it back to head office, and they would deal with it. Right. Now they send me that same document electronically. I click a button and it goes back to them. We've eliminated the paper.
Right.
So that's a huge savings, a huge efficiency.
Yeah, great efficiency. It's got to be good for the environment. It's bad for the people that sell paper.
Right. So again, there are
trade-offs.
There are winners and losers. So I think overall, it's been a better experience for all. And I think if you talk to lawyers, if you talk to financial planners, all those kind of guys, they will say the same thing, that, we always thought we had to keep these filing cabinets full of paper because somebody has signed it. Right. But now that we realize that's not a thing, I think that will be a significant change. So 2 more items. Personal finances.
Right.
So do you think that we have learned to live either differently or with less? And again, we've talked about examples, we're eating at home, we're cooking at home, that sort of thing.
I'm quite confident people are living differently. The question is, what's going to change in the future to eat up that disposable income? So we know that lots of people that are telling us, because they're not doing these things they used to do, they're actually able to save money during this horrible crisis. I believe that because you're not stopping at Timmy's or Starbucks on the way to work, because you're not driving into work. There are all sorts of ways you could be putting money in your pocket. But I also think that other folks are going to come along and find ways to take that money out of your pocket. There'll just be new ways that money gets spent in the future.
Yeah, and
transition.
We talked about that on last week's show. The savings rate has actually gone up, and there's some mathematical reasons for that. But one of them is, I have less money to spend things on. So there are 2 different economies. There's one economy, one set of people who have been crushed by this. Their income has disappeared. Yep. They didn't qualify for EI, or they qualified for CERB, but their income is a lot less. And this has been a huge, huge problem.
Right.
But there are other people who, hey, now I can work from home. Yep. I'm getting the same paycheck. I don't have to pay for my commute, my gas, my coffee shop. I'm not paying for daycare.
Some of them aren't wearing pants anymore.
And we are both wearing pants. I don't know if you can see it on the wide shot here or not. But yes, there are many days when we're meeting with our clients in our shorts, Right. So nobody's been out buying suits the last 2 or 3 months. And as a result, that has freed up a lot of cash. Do you think that will carry on, or do you think we will revert to our old ways when things go back to normal?
So anyone that returns back to normal, the old patterns that they had before, they're going to return to the patterns that they had before. So the question is, how many of us are going to have our job, our living situation change to the point now where we're not going to go back? And I think more than half the population is going to have some permanent change.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that people have taken advantage of this time to implement positive, permanent change. I mean, you don't have your commute in the morning, so does that mean you can go out for a walk and get a little bit of exercise? Can you go for a run? Can you get your workout in? Can you, make food rather than take out whatever? Hopefully some of those things do become more permanent change. Now, final point, and this is the one that'll get me all sorts of grief, so you can be the voice of reason here and tell me that I am completely wrong on this point. But I believe that as a result of this experience, we are actually going to have less trust in authority. I think we are going to be less automatically willing to say, oh, okay, that's what they're saying. So when I look at how this pandemic has unfolded, it's pretty clear to me that we've been getting mixed messages.
Every day?
Every single day. So at the start, it was no big deal. And I mean, the medical officers of health, both in Canada and the US, in Ontario and Canada, said, yeah, face masks, don't worry about it, not a thing.
Right.
And now the advice is, yes, the cloth face masks, not medical grade, but the cloth face masks are a good thing. So how is it that the world changed, that advice became different? And I get the counter argument. Look, this is a new thing.
Right.
We didn't have all the facts. It was fast developing and so on and so forth. Now, I understand the concept of a cloth mask. If there are particles coming out, it will stop the particles.
Right.
I don't think you need to be a real genius to figure that out. Now, it could be that the reason they said don't worry about the masks is at the start, we don't want people hoarding them. We want them for frontline workers.
They didn't have any. Right.
They didn't have any. So it would have just created panic if they told us that. Okay, but couldn't they have been honest?
Yeah, maybe.
And just said, you know what, we think they work, but we need to keep them for the frontline workers. Here, let's post some patterns online so you can make your own cloth masks. And you and I both have cloth masks that were made by relatives. Grandma, whatever, who knows how to sew. People have been cranking them out like crazy. So could the government not have told us to do that sooner?
Sure.
My other beef as an accountant is I don't think they've been completely transparent with the numbers.
Well, I'm sure they haven't been. But I don't think they know the real numbers. And how can you?
Well, but in Singapore, I'm told, they produce very detailed stats every day. Mm-hmm. So they don't put the name of the person who has COVID, but pretty much everything else, because it is now apparent that the greatest number of deaths have been related to long-term care homes, seniors' homes, and that sort of thing. Right. And it was only in the last month and a half that the government started separating out, I'm talking about here in Ontario, those stats. So had we known that sooner, would we have been even more aggressive at taking specific procedures, locking down, whatever? I don't know.
Yeah.
But how many people, so what they report now is here's the number of new cases. Okay, that's an important number.
It's a metric.
It's a metric. How many of those new cases are being hospitalized? Well, we know that. We know how many people are in hospital. How many require hospitalization? How many are self-isolating at home? Right. How many are severe? How many by age group?
Well, they're not talking about respirators anymore. Have you noticed that?
Well, and that's because the last stats I saw in terms of ventilators, there are far less than 100 people in Ontario in a hospital on ventilators. So yes, this was the big thing that we thought was going to be the huge problem, and it turned out to not be. Now, I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt on that because we didn't know, but why can't we see all the stats? Wouldn't that, shouldn't we as the public have a right to know something?
You're assuming they have the stats, and I'm not sure that that's the case.
And maybe they don't. In which case, okay, why don't they have the stats?
That's a yes.
Why are they not being reported up? So I think as human beings, if we go, well, you know what, some of the stuff they told us turned out not to be accurate. Am I going to blindly believe all that kind of stuff? Now, this is not a rant about the medical profession because you and I are not doctors.
Right.
But have you ever been in a situation where a financial institution has made comments that perhaps, well, this is the loan you should get, or this is the right thing for you? If this experience has taught us nothing, is it not that maybe we should be questioning that as well?
Right.
And if we can learn to do that as a result of this, well, then I think we will look back on this and this will be a positive experience. So I guess we'll see.
That's right. In a time of transition, all you can do is look out for yourself.
Yep.
Right.
And I think that's a pretty good way to end it. Any other final comments that you've got on anything to do with this?
No, I mean, we want everybody to stay healthy and safe, and just use your head, folks. Common sense will get you a lot further than you might think.
Yeah. There's no reason you can't think.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that. And again, I'm not saying you should do the exact opposite of what everyone else says, although that might actually be a pretty good strategy. I think I did write a book on that. But yeah, at the very least, spend 20 seconds thinking about it.
Right.
And certainly in the financial realm, I think that's a good idea. Excellent. Ted, thank you very much for being here. So I think the bottom line also is that the media gets a lot of clicks by bad news. So That's why we tried to throw in a bit of good news here today too. It might not get us as many clicks, but we've still got another period of time where we're in this weird zone. So let's make use of it and see if we can't come out better than before. Learn new skills, have lunch with your family, take your dog for a walk, whatever it is. So that's what we hope to have happen. Ted, hopefully next time we are back in the regular studio. We will see. For now, that's our show for today. Thanks for listening. Until next week, I'm Doug Hoyes. That was Debt Free in 30. Or in this case, about 32 minutes, but
That's all
good.